viewers under the title Peep into the Past, अगर उर्दू में कहें दौड़ पीछे की तरफ ए गर्दिशे आयाम तू, हम आगा शाहिद अली का एक तवील टेलीविज़न इंटरव्यू आपको किस्तों में दिखा रहे हैं। ये उस सिलसिले की तीसरी कड़ी है या तीसरा किस्त है। आगा शाहिद अली ने दौरानी इंटरव्यू बहज़ती शायर के हाउ ही फ्लरिश्ड और हाउ ही रीच टू हिज पीक ऑफ प्लेइंग विद द वर्ड्स, उसका फर्स्ट लव कश्मीर के लैंडस्केप्स थे। देन व्हेन ही माइग्रेटेड फ्रॉम कश्मीर टू अमेरिका, एरिज़ोना बिकेम हिज second fascination for the landscapes. He talks about how he was nostalgic about Kashmir, and which finally culminated into writing the poetic collection on Kashmir from a distance under the title The Half-Inch Himalayas. It is largely a tribute to the beauty, to the longing and to the nostalgia of Kashmir. But the second poetic collection was basically germinated into his mind by the tragedies of Kashmir in 1990, and he finally did the poetic collection on Kashmir post 1990 known as The Country Without a Post Office. He talks in this episode about how the title got into his mind. One of his close friends, Irfan Hassan, who was present while he was giving the interview, and during the conversation he is laughing at him, pointing towards him with a smile, that Irfan Hassan basically saw in the GPO Srinagar the pile of letters which were not being delivered due to the situation prevailing in Kashmir at that time, and he saw one of the letters addressed to his father on the pavement of GPO and delivered to his father. Aga Shahid Ali said that this Irfan Hassan's act finally resulted into the title The Country Without a Post Office. While talking about the two contexts of Kashmir, he told me in one of the conversations without interview that just like the Faizus poem, मुझसे पहली सी मोहब्बत मेरी महबूब न मांग, मैंने समझा था कि तू है तो दरख्शां है हयात, तेरा गम है तो गम दहर का झगड़ा क्या है, तेरी सूरत से है आलम में बहारों को सबात, तेरी आंखों के सिवा दुनिया में रखा क्या है. Then it has a context, this poem. लौट जाती है उधर को भी नजर क्या कीजिए, अब भी दिलकश है तेरा हुस्न मगर क्या कीजिए, मुझसे पहली सी मोहब्बत मेरी महबूब न मांग. ऐसे ही दो पहलू थे उसके कश्मीर की मोहब्बत के. जो पहला पहलू था when he was in love with Kashmir's beauty and its landscapes, it resulted into the poetic collection of the Half-Inch Himalayas. जब दूसरा था कि खाक में लिथड़े हुए खून में नहलाए हुए लौट जाती है उधर को भी नजर क्या कीजिए, that was post 1990, the tragedies and the sufferings of the people. But he said that he did not want to address sufferings directly. He maintained an artistic distance from all these tragedies and waited for some time till he penned down The Country Without a Post Office. And he also talks about how he used to discard each poem 50-60 times and would finally finalize the draft after 60 writings. And he was also talking about that he may publish someday those all drafts to make the people understand that how difficult it is for a poet to finally make the final draft of a poem. I hope that this series of Aga Shahid Ali would be liked by you. आप इसको बहुत पसंद करेंगे. और इसके बाद इनके वालिद मोहतरम आगा अशरफ अली का भी एक तवील टेलीविज़न इंटरव्यू हमारे पास है, उसको भी हम किस्तों में आपके सामने पेश करेंगे. और भी बहुत से हमको इंटरव्यूज़ मिले हैं, उनको हम इसी टाइटल के तहत दौड़ पीछे की तरफ ए गर्दिश आयाम तो या पीप इनटू द पास्ट के तहत आपको दिखाएंगे.
Then I moved in 1983 to Arizona, and I was there for 4 years. It was the strangest experience to see this desert. And it's not a desert like the Sahara, it's not a sand desert. It's a desert that has foliage. It has a lot of cacti and other kinds of plants. And I saw another landscape, totally different from Kashmir, but it was larger than life. It was grand. And in some ways, it was even grander than Kashmir because it was so unexpected. It was nothing like Kashmir. If you've seen pictures of the Andes in South America, or if you've seen pictures of the Southern Alps in New Zealand, or of the Alps in Switzerland, or of and other places, it's not totally unexpected. It's just that in Kashmir, I think we have a concentration of those places, so that you'll have Switzerland and Assam and southern New Zealand and South America. You'll find all that concentrated here. That is what makes Kashmir, I think, so unusual. But there was nothing like that desert I'd ever seen in my life. It's this desert surrounded by these mountains. Oh, I should mention something interesting. Most of my life I have lived in a valley. Kashmir, I'm in a valley. Delhi a few years. But then when I went to Pennsylvania, I was in what's called Keystone Valley. They used to call that also Happy Valley. Then I went to Arizona. Tucson, the city of Tucson, is also in a valley. And then I moved to upstate New York. I was in Mohawk Valley. That's also a valley. And then now where I live is Pioneer Valley. So there's valley upon valley upon valley upon valley in my life. And of course, many people like to refer to their valleys as happy. So, I was talking about the landscape. So Arizona, this is what's amazing about Arizona. Here's the desert. And there are these incredible cacti. Particularly there's one called saguaro, which is an endangered species. Then there are these mountains there. And you can go to the mountain in winter, just within an hour, right there, you see at least 4 or 5 ecological zones change. So you are here in the desert, and within half an hour you're in Gulmarg. And they are up there in January, they're skiing, there's snow, and down here I'm without a sweater. See, it's quite amazing. And then if you go into northern Arizona, and you see the canyons, the Grand Canyon particularly, you look at it and you say, it seems like a work of architecture. And then you're astounded because you realize no man could ever have created this land. And then there are other canyons, like there's Oak Creek Canyon and a city called Sedona. Then you go into New Mexico and you see their desert and their, particularly Santa Fe and Albuquerque. I just can't tell you, it is truly, and then southern Utah, it just takes your breath away, that landscape. So that landscape came to my aid very nicely when I was ready for a departure in my work from the half-inch Himalayas, which of course dealt with, in many ways, with my childhood. I'll read some of those poems to you also later. And then I went to Arizona and it dealt with this other experience, also in mythic terms. I like to see things in mythic terms. And then came the uprising in Kashmir in 1990. And I was in America. I was again ready for a departure in my work. See, it's very easy, I think, for an artist, once you have mastered some techniques, to keep doing what you're doing, because you can do it well enough. And it's not a challenge anymore, but you can, if you're lazy also. Robert Frost once said, a poet should learn to do something really well. And once you've learned to do it well, you should stop doing it. Go on to something else. And I had basically been writing in a free verse, which had formal structures for me, which I created, but what you'd call open forms. A better term than free verse is open forms. But I was ready to try some of the stricter forms, traditional stricter forms, like the sonnet and the canzonis and the pantoums and the ghazal and the tetzerima and so on. So I was looking for a departure in my work, and suddenly I was given this immense subject matter, which was the destruction of my home land of Kashmir. Now the point is, it would be too easy to write a facile poetry about the sufferings of Kashmir. I did not want to turn the sufferings of Kashmir and of its people into just a convenience for me. कि लोग कहें, हाँ देखो मेरा भी क्या गम है, देखो मेरा दिल दुख रहा है, Kashmir को क्या हो गया. We can all sit and talk like that. But if I want to really serve this subject matter, I have to be far more disciplined as a writer. I'm not, in conversation we can say, क्या हो गया, तबाही हो गई, ये हो गया. मगर मैं कह रहा हूँ, when you write a poem, you have to be really disciplined. And there is a stature to the subject matter. like the suffering of a people which you have to serve. Like the Holocaust of the destruction of the Jews, of the European Jews in World War II. It's very easy, I think, to make some very, because you see, you've got such a big subject matter, so that has, in a sense, sometimes people will think because the subject matter is important, the poem is also good, the film is also good. But after a while, you'll start saying, this is not quite. So then the question is, how do you make sure that it is as good a poem as a poem about a tree or about anything? And the subject matter, I think, creates other kinds of demands. And my first poem about Kashmir, again, as I was talking to you about aesthetic distance, about love and so on, I think political poems and love poems are the most difficult to write. Because in both cases, the distance is difficult to acquire. I did not write a poem about the sufferings of Kashmir till the spring of '91. So it was almost a year and a half after the Troubles that I wrote a poem. It's called I See Kashmir from New Delhi at Midnight. And then from that point on, it started coming easy. But each poem, I spent sometimes a month writing a poem. And it went through 50, 60 drafts. I can sometime, I think maybe next year or something, I'll bring some of my drafts. So you can see how the poem started and what I went through and how I cut words and then cut phrases and cut words. And of course I've done this with poems all my life, but with these poems it was even more demanding because I had to be almost brutally honest with myself. So it ended up being the work of almost 5 years, the poems in my new book, which came out just 4 months ago in April. Oh, well, I got copies in February, and I'm glad because the book is dedicated to my mother, and she saw it. The copies came in February, and so she saw it, and she knew all along I was going to dedicate it, that it was dedicated to her. So I was very happy I was able to give the first copy that arrived to my parents, and then. But its official publication was in April. In April it hit the market in America. And it's called The Country Without a Post Office. It's important, people, sometimes somebody says, oh, you mean the city without a post office? The city without post office? I say, no, these articles are very important. It's The Country Without a Post Office. What I was referring to, how I got my title, I forgot to mention that in '92, Viking Penguin in India brought out a selected poems of mine called The Beloved Witness, selected poems, and I'll maybe read to you a poem I've written which explains why it was called The Beloved Witness. So I'm quite actually happy with my titles: The Half-Inch Himalayas, A Walk Through the Yellow Pages, The Beloved Witness, A Nostalgist's Map of America, The Country Without a Post Office. I'm quite pleased with my titles. The reason I called the book The Country Without a Post Office, or how the idea came to me of the title, is a friend of mine, Irfan, a very close friend of mine here in Kashmir. He sent to me, I know you're also, he's called Irfan, that's why he's smiling. He wrote a letter to me in America. This is in 90. और आपको याद होगा कि 90 में यहाँ 6-7 महीने 8 महीने कोई खत डिलीवर नहीं हुआ था. तो he one day went to वो जो GPO है बंड पे, and he saw hundreds and hundreds of वो bags जो है ना बोरियां हैं, canvas bags जिनमें letters stuffed with letters, किसी ने डिलीवर नहीं की. फिर उसने कहा मुझे, उसने खत लिखा था, उसने लिखा था कि वहाँ he looked down और फ्लोर पे एक खत पड़ा था डैडी के नाम पे, तो उसने उठा के वो भेजा. It wasn't a very important letter, but that's how I thought of it, The Country Without a Post Office. So I used that incident in a poem, in a prose poem, in which the recipient of that, it's a letter this person is sending me. It's an imaginary letter. I mixed 4 or 5 letters of different people to me and made one letter out of it, some imagined, some real. And in that, the person writing to me refers to a letter that has arrived for me, that he's gone to the post office and found a letter for me particularly, which is what we do in poetry all the time. We tell factual lies in order to uncover deeper truths. I never claim I'm telling you truth as you expect it in history or journalism. Facts, I mean.
Shahid, when did you leave Kashmir and how many years it is now that you are out of Kashmir? And when
I'm
you
never out of Kashmir. Let me answer like that. Because, you see, let me answer your question in an evasive way. Because if I say I've been away for so many years, people will say, oh, no wonder he's away. You see, that he's. But the point is, first of all, I've never been away from Kashmir. It's always been in me. That's why I was able to write the poems of the half-inch Himalayas, though I had been away for several years. And even while I was away, I have been coming back very regularly. And since in the last 10 years, every year. The only year I wasn't able to come was 1990. Because, and that wasn't because of the troubles, it was because of, I had been given a year's leave in my college. So, and I was busy polishing up my book, Nostalgia's Map of America, to give it to my publisher. So I came to India in November 90. So that year I didn't come at all to India. 90, and then, so I was in Delhi for the winter, and then I came here in 91. So that's why I wasn't here in 90. But otherwise, I've been here 87, 88, 89, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. 96, I couldn't come because my mother was in America. She was undergoing treatment for her illness. And then I've come this year, and I'll, inshallah, keep coming every year. I want to, next year I'll come for a longer period than this year, and the year after I have a sabbatical leave, so I'll come for a whole year. And I hope that there has been some talk with a couple of departments in the university, about the possibility of my coming and teaching as a visiting fellow in the university, and I would love to do it. I would love to share whatever I have with people here. I gave 3 lectures in the English department, and I conducted 2 informal, one session I've already conducted, one I'll be conducting this coming Monday at the media, I never remember the whole name of the department. And क्या कहते हैं MERC में. So it's been wonderful. The people, the enthusiasm of the students is very infectious, and I found it very endearing, and I would love to be able to do it every year. So अगर कोई permanent बात हो, और अगर मैं हूँ, I am a son of Kashmir, I would love to be able to share whatever I have to share. I don't think it is really grand what I have to share. Some of it is pretty simple, but I can do it in a, I would say, in a fairly precise manner and in a fairly disciplined manner. And I think it would be interesting to do it. Or अगर 1-2 साल के बाद लोग कहें you have nothing to offer us, I am quite willing to bow out of the picture, quite without, in good humor, without feeling.
when you are in America, what's the exact nostalgia you have for the Kashmir? How do you feel for Kashmir from a distance?
See, it depends on, it's not one thing, it's a mixture of things. जब मैं पहले गया था अमेरिका पढ़ने के लिए, I was a student, I did not have money, so I couldn't come regularly. तो 4 साल के लिए मैं आया नहीं, फिर आया मैं, फिर कुछ और सालों के लिए मैं आ नहीं पाया. जब मेरी एजुकेशन ख़त्म हो गई और मुझे नौकरी मिली, उसके बाद मैं आ सका हर साल. तो when I first went, the nostalgia was a very palpable one, and it was, I think, it was a nostalgia for childhood, for friends, for certain smells, certain seasons, for my parents. You see what I mean? For everything. But I would say it was at a very basic level. Then when I started coming to Kashmir every year, and I knew that I could at least afford to make 1 trip a year, I stopped missing Kashmir too much, because मेरा ये ख्याल था कि देखो 9 महीने तो गुजर जाते हैं. This is one good thing about teaching. I'm not in business or something else. I tell people I will never have money like you people who are doctors and engineers and whatever else you are, but you'll never have time like I do. साल में 4-4.5 महीने छुट्टी होती, 3 महीने गर्मियों में. You know, like we have winter holidays in Kashmir. In America, you have summer holidays. So 3 months in the summer, 1 month in the winter. 4 months. I mean, why should I leave that ever? Isn't it? I don't see why people don't want to just be calm and have a nice time talking and eating and seeing movies and listening to music, and just be calm rather than running after money. So I'm quite happy about that. So I stopped missing Kashmir because I knew 9 महीने गुजर जाएंगे, और मैं, लोग मुझे कहते हैं कि you know, on your way to India in the summers or Kashmir, to Kashmir or so on, आप यूरोप में कभी रुकते हैं, and you see, it's easy. But जैसे मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी बंद होती है, मेरी बिल्कुल तड़प होती है, मैं सीधा कश्मीर पहुंचता हूँ. I mean, I don't ever stop in Europe. I haven't so far, which is perhaps silly. I should perhaps for a week at least. एक साल रोम देख लो, एक साल पेरिस देख लो. मगर I have such an urge to be back in Kashmir. I can't tell you. So I stopped missing Kashmir, but then in 1990, when the trouble started, a different kind of ache for Kashmir started. You know, this एक तड़प रहती थी हर वक्त कि क्या हो रहा है. कोई जिसको मैं जानता हूँ वो किसी को क्या हो गया रात को, कोई घर पहुंचा नहीं पहुंचा. That, so it became a different kind of missing, a different. It's not nostalgia. Of course, there is a nostalgia for the way things used to be. कि आप रात के 2 बजे भी बाहर जाएं, लड़कियां रात के 2 बजे अपने घर के बाहर चल सकती थी without any fear. So that's something you do miss. 2 बजे 3 बजे कोई उठकर वॉक के लिए जा रहा है. My mother and I used to get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 and go for a walk. You see, that sort of thing. So you miss what you think was a ideal time, but then it was combined with a lot of anguish for what was happening. And so I would say of late Kashmir has been non-stop in my mind, but it is not the kind of nostalgia that you would associate with, let's say, the poems you'll find in Half Inch Himalayas. It's a different kind of missing.